This should be an interesting couple of hours coming up. How many of you folks have read The Contact Has Begun by Philip J. Krapf? How many? Boy, not nearly as many as I would have thought. Interesting. Okay, maybe only 15% of the audience has read the book. Well, let me try to give you just a little bit of background on Philip. The book is entitled The Contact Has Begun. It is an extraordinary chronicle of approximately a 3.5 day conscious experience aboard a ship, with tons of information put forward. Let's think about Philip for just a minute. Here we have a man who has lived in mainstream society, a journalist for the LA Times, retired from the LA Times Metro desk, decades as a mainstream journalist. A man has an experience very, very far afield from his normal everyday life. What does he do with it? How does he handle it? I think all of us in the room are opening our minds to the possibilities that are out there. But the majority of our brothers walking up and down the sidewalk outside the building, their minds are still right here. And when someone is thrust kicking and screaming into the middle of an experience like this, what do you do with it? Well, he did the brave thing, and he wrote about the experience so all of us could contemplate it, sift it, think about it, accept it or reject it. But he did the brave thing. And like all of the early giant rock survivors who we got to know so well in the first part of the week, he paid a price, changed his life. So with that foundation stone in mind, for the next couple hours, Philip is going to share his experience with all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, Philip Krapf.
Everybody gets my name wrong. My name is actually Alice, and I just stepped through the looking glass. I have a structure here of what the points I want to emphasize, but I never seem. Get up to the mic. Okay, this mic. I don't think this mic is working, is it? This mic is working. Does somebody? Oh, okay. Okay. I asked that the house lights be kept up because I feel isolated when I'm just up here and I can't see anybody. I'd like to see who I'm talking to. I've also asked that someone monitor the microphone that they have here for asking questions, because I have a tendency to ramble. And when I ramble, I'm like a monkey on a tree. I go up one branch and I see an intriguing limb and I go out on that limb, and next thing I know, I'm out on a limb when I don't know where I am anymore, and I have to be brought back, and sometimes I forget where I was. So this person are you going to be monitoring me? He's going to kind of keep track of that branch and bring me back when I get out on a limb. I do have this very well structured. I'm very good at organization. Never once have I ever gone through it chronologically. I'm always deviating around. I had to put on my reading glasses to read it. A person asked me one time. I think he sent me an email. I don't know if I ever answered him. I try to answer all my mail, but he said, "Were you wearing your glasses when you were up there?" And I don't know what that has to do with anything. But I thought about it, and yeah, I was wearing my glasses, my distance glasses. I didn't have my bifocals. I didn't do too much reading while I was up there. I don't even remember seeing any. I don't remember seeing any of their writing. I did see what was known as a roster, which was in English, and I did read it, and I didn't have any problems with it. But then I started thinking also, all the time I was up there, 3 days, I never once thought about a smoke. I didn't have any cigarettes with me. They didn't have any ashtrays. So, the question actually, the question, were you wearing your glasses? It's such a mundane question. You know, I've been wearing glasses for 61 years, since I was 2 years old. So anyway, yes, I was wearing my glasses. I wasn't wearing my bifocals. I didn't need them, and I never even once thought about a smoke. So maybe that's the way to quit. Anyway, I'll start out with my my outline here, and who knows where I'll go from there. I like to, at first when the book was published, I accepted media interviews. I felt comfortable with media interviews because I'm from the media, and it was easy for me to just talk to the telephone and not even contemplate the 5 or 6 or 7 million people who are out there in Art Bell's audience, and it was very natural for me. I rejected all invitations to speak. The idea of giving a public speech just terrified me. I just, you know, you wouldn't think that anything like that would be so terrifying considering what I just gone through. But nevertheless, the idea of giving a public speech terrified me. And then I did accept one speech from the speaking engagement from the Art Bell Chat Club of the San Fernando Valley. And I felt committed to that because the woman there had called Art Bell, and he emailed back and says, "Get me his number." And she was instrumental in getting me on his show. And next day, the publisher got 3,000 orders for the book. So I feel I owe her something. And so I accepted her invitation. And then the head of the MUFON, the LA County chapter of MUFON, called me. I didn't know him. And we chatted. And he chatted with me for about an hour. And he really allayed my fears. He said, "You don't have to worry about you know, you don't have to worry about being terrified. You're not going to be in a real hostile crowd." And it's been almost 5 minutes, I guess, since I've been here. I haven't wet my pants and I haven't fainted, so I suppose I will probably get through it. But I'm still dry. Anyway, not many of you have read the book, so I think in that case, I guess I should give a kind of a synopsis of the book. Some places I've gone to, the vast majority of people have read the book, and so what I've done is I've just kind of given a very, very brief synopsis. And what it usually does is it develops into an exchange, and I kind of like that format rather than giving a speech. When the first speech I gave, did I finish my MUFON thought? I didn't finish my MUFON thought. Oh, the guy from MUFON called me and said, you know, and talked me into appearing. I said, "Okay, fine, I'll appear." It took him about an hour. I said, "Fine, I'll appear." So then I thought, well, if I'm going to accept his invitation, I better start calling the other people because it wouldn't be fair, and calling them back and say, "I've accepted an invitation. If the invitation still stands with your group, yeah, I'll be glad to appear." So then I did accept invitations. And I gave several talks and didn't know what I was going to do. I just started rambling, talking about my book, and an exchange developed between me and the audience. And I like that format. I first tried to read. I have a speech all written out here, and this summary summarizes the speech. And I read the first page. I think I was down in, was I in San Diego? Okay, San Diego. I read the first page, and it really was very stilted. I just didn't feel comfortable. I said, "I don't feel comfortable doing this, and I don't know what to do." So somebody said, "Just tell us about your book." So I said, okay. So, so anyway, I'll tell. Since a lot of you haven't read the book, I'll tell you about the book. Though, as I say, some places where most of the people have read the book, I've spent just a little bit of time on it. But since most of you haven't read the book, I'll spend a little bit more time on it. Basically, what happened is that I come from the mainstream. I was a newspaper man for 30 years. I spent 25 years at the Los Angeles Times on the Metro copy desk. We in the mainstream do not give much credence to, or had not up until that point, or still do, I guess, to stories of alien abductions and UFOs. I was not interested in the subject because I didn't believe it. We newspaper men were even probably a little more critical than the average mainstream person, because newspapermen by nature are very skeptical. And I was skeptical, and I never paid much attention to it. I never did any reading in the New Age genre. I never read about UFOs or alien abductions, except what I took from the mainstream press. Anything that was in the mainstream press I knew about, which was very little, because the mainstream press does not give a lot of coverage to this field. So, where was I?
The belief and your work and how this kind of came up on it.
I still don't know where I am.
Why don't you tell them how kind of orthodoxy it was?
Oh, okay. We were talking about how mainstream I was, you know. And that's the way we mainstream people are. We can't keep our thoughts together. But anyway, I considered alien abductions as brutally wackos and crackpots, but charitably. There really wasn't much to support the story to justify a news story. So anyway, so I did not believe there was such a thing as an abduction experience. I now believe that there is such a thing. I know there is such a thing as an abduction experience. That does not necessarily mean that I believe that all people who have had an abduction experience have actually been abducted, because people have come to me who have had experiences and they are suffering. Some of them are suffering very much. They're traumatized, and they find that they can speak to people like me and others who may have had an experience. They can't speak to their friends. They can't speak to their colleagues. Being younger than I am, I don't have to work anymore, so I don't have to go down there and listen to all the bull from my colleagues down there, and the derision and the ridicule. So I am convinced that there is such a thing as an abduction experience. I still am by nature a skeptic. I still don't think that I still have doubts whether or not all abduction experiences actually involve abductions. That doesn't mean that the trauma is any different. If they believe they've suffered it, if they believe they've been abducted, then they're suffering it. It's an experience for them. Whether the experience is in their mind or is out there somewhere, there's still an experience. Okay, so anyway, last June, I'm lying in my bed. I'm by myself. My wife is off with her sick mother, who had just had some serious surgery. She's about 3 miles away. And I woke up about 2:30, something like that. And the room was awash in a bluish-white light, floodlight fashion. It wasn't a spotlight. And I was mystified. I wasn't particularly scared. I'm not superstitious. I don't look under the bed for monsters or anything else. I don't avoid black cats or ladders or things like that. I'm a very rational person. So I thought the television I might have fallen asleep with the television on. I reached for the remote control, aimed it at the TV. The TV screen was dark. I looked to the drapes. There's a street light out in front of my house. The drapes were drawn, so it wasn't coming from there. So I thought, well, that's strange. I reached over and got my glasses. And headed for the light switch on the wall on the entrance. And I got no more than 2 or 3 steps, and then I could feel momentarily myself weightless, being lifted, and it was only momentarily. And then the beam narrowed. The beam narrowed into a very tight focus, spotlight fashion, and it was on me. And that's when I felt the beginning of rising. Now the rising took maybe a couple of seconds at the most, maybe even a split second. I did not see the ground fall away. I did not see anything coming up. I did not see anything. All I know was I didn't see anything. I was surrounded by the light. The light held me. And I found myself in a room facing some very strange creatures. And remember now, I come from the mainstream. Now, if it happened to any of you, most of you who might be UFO researchers or enthusiasts or believers, your reaction would probably be different than mine. You might say, "Well, thank God it's happened to me. I've got my chance. You know, they finally picked me." Where I come from, we don't consider that sort of thing, but at the same time, I was without anxiety. I wasn't tranquilized, I wasn't drugged, I wasn't in an altered state of consciousness or anything like that. I simply was not filled with anxiety. And I thought this was very, very strange because this is not the normal human reaction to something like this when it happens to someone who is not a believer. Now, when it happens to a believer, you know, that's different because you may consider this some kind of a very, very fortunate thing for you. I was wondering why I was not screaming out in abject terror, which I think would be the normal human reaction, and I wasn't. Anyway, let me go through the book real fast. I met these creatures. I thought I was there for an examination. I was in a large examination room. It was filled with tables. There were people on the tables. Most of them, for the most part, they were asleep. And I realized that even though I've gotten most of my information from the mainstream press, because as I say, still don't read metaphysical newspapers. I don't read UFO stories. I don't know the jargon. I don't know the leading characters. I do know there's a name called Whitley Strieber, whatever. That's about as much as I know about it. Anything that hasn't been in the mainstream press, I don't know about it. Although, television has been doing a lot since the Roswell anniversary last year, and with the millennium coming up. So I do like to watch the Discovery Channel, the A&E Channel, and the Learning Channel. So they've been doing a lot. But television also tends to sensationalize because they're ratings driven. So I watch it for the entertainment value. So I may have picked up some information there too. Who knows? Okay, I'm in this room, and I see all these creatures around, and I thought I was there for an examination because from what I read in the mainstream press from abductions, an examination usually is what ties most of these stories together. So I figured I was just there for an examination like everybody else, but it was made clear to me that I wasn't there for an examination, and I was led away to another place on the ship in which I met with a group of aliens, 11 of them, and we over the next approximately 3 days, and I estimated the days by the number of hours passing. In other words, I thought, okay, we've been in this meeting for 4 hours. Oh God, or 6 hours, or whatever. Then I'd take an hour and a half for lunch or for a nap or go to the toilet or something like that. So I estimated the time by what I thought were the hours passing, and I figured I was there for about 72 hours, which is actually pretty accurate. Basically, they sat me down. They told me that I was not there for an examination. They said that I was there for what they call POEI, which is preparatory orientation, education, and indoctrination, and that I had been selected to perform an important designated task. And I'm going to go through this real quickly because there's a lot of details I'm leaving out of necessity because this is, how long we got here? 2 hours? And I have been known to go on for up to 4 hours without even realizing it and still having more to say. So I'm going to have to either speak twice as fast or leave out half the material that I've been giving out or cut out half the questions. But anyway, I'm not going to go into the details right now because you're going to ask me about that. You're going to ask me what they look like. You're going to ask me what they wore. You're going to ask me about all kinds of things. And because I can anticipate these questions because they normally I know what basically the questions that do come up. So I'm going to kind of skip those because I know the questions that are going to come up. So I won't go into their physical appearance right now. Basically, they told me that they have been abducting they've been monitoring the Earth for hundreds and hundreds of years, maybe up to 1,000 years, they do this routinely, scouting the universe. And when they come across a planet that has intelligent creatures that have built civilizations, however rudimentary, that they put if this civilization is within 1,000 years of evolving, according to their estimations, of evolving into star travelers, then they assign a permanent monitoring station to that planet, and Earth falls into that category. Where they're still back in the Stone Ages or Bronze Ages or whatever, and they're still 10,000 years away from developing there. What they usually do is they just simply catalog the thing and then move on and maybe come back in a couple of thousand years and see how things are progressing. They said that mankind has reached that point where he's now on the verge of going into deep space, and I suppose that's 50 to 100 years away, where we're going to be going to certainly the nearby stars, if not probably not other galaxies. That's simply too far. The Milky Way galaxy, our own galaxy, is 100,000 light years across, so that's a little bit excessive. But certainly we're going to be starting to travel to nearby stars, which are 5 or 6 nearest ones are 5 or 6 light years away. I don't know. They said the time has come for our two species to meet. And what they now in the past, what they have done is they've been studying the human body cell by cell, and they have been taking people, anonymous people. I just saw another intriguing branch I want to go off onto here, but I better stick with this. They've been taking anonymous people in order to keep it low key, so that not to get a lot of publicity, and for two reasons. Number one, they don't want to create a panic because they're not ready. They weren't ready for contact yet, and they've been doing this for quite a long time, at least 50 years. And two, they want to have as little influence upon the culture as possible. In other words, if you're studying the culture, you don't want to influence it, because then it skews your results. So try not to influence the culture. Try not to get so that there might be some kind of reaction, either militarily or legislatively, or mobilization or whatever. So they've been playing it very low key and taking anonymous people who normally wouldn't be liable to gain a lot of press by going to the newspapers. At the beginning, the papers actually did cover these stories quite a bit, if I recall. A little before my time. I didn't start in newspaper business until '63, and I didn't get to the Times till '68. So back in the 50s and late 40s, they did actually cover this quite a bit. But that's because of the novelty. And I think they stopped. There's no conspiracy, I don't think. I think they just simply stopped covering it because they felt there was no story there and the novelty had worn off. And so, so the mainstream press has not been covering this area at all. Where was I?
You're in the room with these 11 aliens. They tell you you're not here for a medical.
Okay. I'm not here. Thank you. Well, this is really helpful. I didn't have anybody like that last time. I keep wondering. I really want to go off this limb here. It's really intriguing to me. I'm going to do it. Keep that thought in mind. I'm going to go off on this limb here. I really want to mention this. It really bothered me. It bothered me ethically and morally that these people that I found to be very, very ethical and moral, very compassionate, very intelligent, very just trustworthy, and people of integrity. And yet, the idea that they were abducting people, it did bother me. I had to somehow, I can't think of the word, but I had to somehow reconcile that with my own moral values. And it was difficult I really struggled with it. And by the way, they didn't like me using the word abduction. They used the word, the two words. They used the phrase, these are not abductions, these were unsolicited visitations. I kept calling them abductions, because that's what they were. Then I thought, well, you know, you got to figure, okay, the common good, it's expedient. And then I remember a situation in which you still have that thought in mind, right? Okay, I'll be coming back to that. I thought of a time when I come out of the Times one night about 10:30, and I was coming across, over to the parking garage, I was coming across Spring Street, and Spring Street is a one-way street south, although there is one northbound lane for buses, and that picks up the commuters going up to City Hall and the courthouse and things like that. And so I was coming across the street with the light, and then the light changed. I got into it was dark. I got into the bus lane, and there was the Times is near Skid Row. It's only 2 streets up in Skid Row from Main Street. And so there's a lot of bums around, a lot of panhandlers. And there was this old guy there, dirty. He had fallen down. He cracked his head. He was obviously drunk. He reeked of alcohol. And he was semi-conscious. He was actually unconscious, but he did come around somewhat because he looked up like that. He was in the bus lane. I looked down, and there was a bus coming up, and the bus had the light. And so I reached down, and I picked him up. I got my hands under his arms. He was dirty, but I pulled him up out of the bus lane. And even as I was doing so, this bus was barreling down, and I stuck my hand up. Now the bus driver could see me because I'm standing up, and I got my hand up, so his headlights hit me. But he wouldn't have seen this man here. And you think the bus driver would slow down, hit his brakes, and that's too much trouble. He just kind of swerves around over the double line, you know. So, Anyway, but if I had not pulled this man up onto the sidewalk, and then he just kind of looked up at me in a dazed condition, and he had a big gash in his forehead, and he was bleeding. The question is, did I abduct him? I took him against his will. I moved him somewhere. He didn't ask me to. But I think the end result justified what I did. So that way I was able to kind of reconcile this moral issue of how they can abduct people and still not be in violation of our own ethical and moral values. Maybe I'm stretching, but that's the way I looked upon it. Where was I?
You're in the room. You're not there for medical. You're there for some other reason.
Okay.
You're there for us.
Okay, I'm in the room, and I'm not there for medical. They said we have been. Now we're not taking the anonymous people anymore. Because mankind has come to the point where we're going to be making contact. It's time for two peoples to make contact. It's necessary. It's not just a matter of. It's not a matter of choice. It's required because no species on any planet is allowed to go into space who has not first passed muster with what they call the Intergalactic Federation of Sovereign Planets, and sovereign is very important there. Mankind has arrived at that, humankind, I don't want to be sexist, humankind has arrived at that point where we're going to be going into space. Quite frankly, a judgment is made. Is this species qualified? Is it ready to take its place among its astral neighbors? Very hostile species are not allowed in. They are simply kept isolated on their home planets. And there's ways they do that, and this may come up in questioning. I won't go into it right now. But there are ways of simply isolating them onto their home planets until they evolve to the point where they either kill themselves off by internecine warfare, or they evolve to the point where they can start getting along with themselves and start getting along with their neighbors. There are no weapons allowed in space. There are no warships in space. Space is a place of peace. Okay. At first, they looked at mankind. They saw mankind's barbarity, and they saw the warfare, and they saw the rape of the environment, and they saw the greed and the Holocaust and the racism, and they saw all the very, very dark side of man. And I'm going to deviate here. They said that humankind is the most diverse species that they had ever come across. They were absolutely flabbergasted, and this is what gave them original problems. They were absolutely flabbergasted that pure goodness could exist in the same society with pure evil. Mother Teresa being on one side, and you think of somebody else who is on the other side. It might be your neighbor, it might be Hitler. You know, I don't know. But never before had they seen that. Usually, and this is this is a generality, but usually they can generally characterize a species just by studying one individual, because the individual usually represents is a microcosm of the whole. They're just so homogeneous. Their intelligence levels don't deviate by more than 1%. Their cultural standards, their moral standards, their ethical standards, they're all so very, very homogeneous. There's not this broad range of diversity. And mankind bothered them. They saw this barbarity. And, but they decided after a while that, and it fooled them at first, because that's what they saw most. But then they saw the more nobler side of the nobler side or the nobler side or the more noble side of mankind, and they saw the great art. They saw the works of beauty of man. They saw a spirit, a soul. They saw great literature and great art and great music and great architecture, and they knew that there was something there. And then it finally occurred to them, as they looked and studied, they finally determined that most of the mischief in the world is created by approximately 20% of the population, and that the 80% of people live very, very ordinary lives of common, everyday decency. And that it's only these 20%. Now, 20% may seem like a small amount, but in 5 billion people, what are we talking about? We're talking about 1 billion people. That's an awful lot of people. But we're talking about the corporate white-collar criminals. We're talking about the thugs. We're talking about the gun runners and the people without conscience, the sociopaths, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, mankind did pass muster and has qualified to be accepted into the intergalactic federation of sovereign planets, and but with reservations, and that is that only that redeemable part of man, that more noble side of his character, people who represent that more noble side of his character, will be welcome. The darker elements will not be welcome. The murderous people who can't be trusted, the leaders of rogue nations, the terrorists who support terrorism, the evil people of the world, they will not be welcome. I said, okay, so who's going to make this determination? You're going to decide who's going to qualify and who isn't going to qualify? Absolutely not. Sovereign is very important to them. Sovereign planets are sovereign planets, and the species are sovereign, and they interfere in the domestic affairs of each species as very little as possible, only as it relates to maybe going into space. And mankind's destiny is in mankind's hands. It's in no one else's hands but mankind's. Our destiny is not in their hands, but they expect mankind, they expect the 80% to clean up their act and put the 20% in their place and isolate them. And what would you call it? Benign isolation, nothing punishment or anything like that. So anyway, the anonymous person is no longer being taken. Now the time has come for contact, and so they've been taking hundreds of people who are leaders in their particular fields in practically every human endeavor, government, law, education, whatever area you can name, the arts, and these people have been selected as liaisons to lay the groundwork for the upcoming summit conference, and a loose timetable is in place. The people they selected, and there are hundreds of them, and actually it's close to 1,000, I think, although it still is in the hundreds. It doesn't quite hit 1,000. And they call these people ambassadors, and they're supposed to at some time come out and say, yes, I had this experience, and yes, they are here, and yes, they are coming, and yes, the summit conference is going to happen, and they have the influence to sway their peers. I have no idea whether or not there might be one of you in this audience right here. I mean, I just don't know. So I'm not going to probe. So anyway, they are they are taking these people and putting them through the same kind of POEI that I went through, or maybe lasting a little bit longer depending upon what their area of specialization is. They asked me, I said, well, what's my purpose here? You know, they've taken also an equal number of minor figures, people who don't have also these ambassadors also have not only the ability to influence their peers, they also have the ability to influence vast segments of the population. So that it's not like someone who's been in the UFO community for 30 years and has been talking about it for 30 years, and he comes out and says they're coming, and everybody says, yeah, we've heard that before, you know. So these are very prominent people who can influence large segments of the population. They've taken an equal number of minor players, such as myself, and who they call deputy envoys, and we are to play minor but supporting roles in this scenario. And I said, well, what's mine? What can I do for you? You know, I got some woodworking tools. You know, maybe I can make you some crafts or something. You know. They said, no, we'd actually like you to do a little writing for us. You know, and they wanted me to write a white paper explaining what the people of Earth can expect in the next decade or so. And a white paper, to me, is a very technical, dry sort of thing. And we met in session over a period of 72 hours, and these sessions lasted for hours at a time. And I did have time off. I had time to go to the bathroom, and I had time to eat, and I had time to sleep. Sleep periods, 2 sleep periods that equals 2 nights, although there were no night or day aboard. And I'm estimating the time going by all this time. And
You're on the ship now. You've been in the first meeting.
oh, okay. We have these meetings, and they're explaining all this to me. And basically, they're telling me who they are, what they're doing here, what they have been doing here, where they come from, what their plans are, and what humankind can expect in the next decade. And they want me to write this white paper. I said, okay, you know, I wasn't the best writer in the world, but they said, you know, I met the qualifications. I could string together a simple declarative English sentence that conveys information, although sometimes I doubt that because I have to turn to him so often. But you know, and I got a writing background, and I said, I'm not the best writer in the world. They said, well, they weren't looking for the best writer. It's after all, it's a journal, not a novel. Okay, fine. You know, I can do that. And then I decided that the white paper is a little too dry, a little too technical. It's not going to get the attention that it really should get. So I decided I'm going to incorporate all the material they gave me, but I'm going to put it in the form of a diary, which is just kind of more interesting. And by the way, I did not name it The Contact Has Begun. I called it A Journalist's Encounter. And I'm not taking issue with my publisher. My publisher is always right. And but they say they were a little bit more forward than I was. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm an outsider. I come with a lot of orthodox baggage. And I have stepped through the looking glass. And I've seen some things around here that to an outsider are weird. And I've listened, I've dropped in and sampled the talks. And this, you know, this stuff is woo. You know? And I'm still by nature a skeptic. And my mind is open. Jodie Foster in the movie Contact said when she came back from her space adventure, and I actually wrote that down here. When she came back from her space adventure, she said, this is Carl Sagan's novel Contact. I suppose you're all familiar with that. It wasn't in the book, by the way. This is dialogue from the movie. I had an experience. I can't prove it. I can't even explain it. But everything that I know as a human being, everything that I am tells me that it was real. And then she goes on from there. I was giving something wonderful, something that changed me forever, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And my position is the same. I had an experience too. I can't prove it. I can't explain it. All I can do is describe it, and I've described it in my book. And I am fully aware that much of the material in my book is in direct contradiction to many of the commonly held beliefs in the UFO community. And, but I can't help that. And people have challenged me on that. And I said, okay, well, look, it's because they believe a certain way. I said, well, look, I'll change my story then. I'll tell it the way you like it. We'll be friends, you know. But I was just kind of kidding around. But that's been my experience. So I can't tell you that. I mean, I can make great friends with you by just simply finding out what you want to hear and confirm your beliefs. And a lot of people, quite frankly, there's a very small minority, a core of people in this community who do not want to entertain any thoughts or any ideas that go against what they already believe. Their minds are not open to it. My mind is open to any possibility. It wasn't last year because I knew where I was. I knew where I was. I was an atheist. 95% of you are wrong. I'm right. They told me about religion. They told me they believe in God. They told me that they have scientific proof of certain things, religious things. I was stunned by that because I don't have any religious background. I don't have any religious training, and I don't believe on the basis of faith. Faith is something simply believing in something that cannot be proven or for which there is no evidence. But I believe them because they say they have scientific evidence. Now, I believe them. I still don't have faith. I used to be an atheist. I don't know what I am anymore. I'm still trying to deal with this thing. Okay, let's see where we should go from here. Okay, so basically they just kind of filled me in. It was 72 hours, and sent me back, and I went into seclusion and sat down in my den for 10, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week for about a month, and I typed and I typed and I typed, and I sent the book out, and it was grabbed up right away, and basically that's it. Let's see if I want to tell you anything else before I say start taking questions.
Why don't you tell them about how they assigned somebody to you and gave you that little trip around there and took you into the observatory? How they showed you the ship and
Oh, okay. You want me to tell them about the observatory?
the tour.
Oh, okay. I had a personal tour. See, I'm omitting a lot of the details because I know that there's going to be a lot of questions, and you people, you're going to have questions on what they look like and what whatever. But and I'm as I say, I've gone on for 4 hours on this, and it's been almost an hour already. So I can go on all night. As a matter of fact, after we close up here, if any of you want to keep going on all night, we'll go out to the table out there and we'll just keep going. But he said he would like me to tell you about the observatory. My personal tour guide and attendant named Gina. Yes, that's the name she went by. She had a name tag that said Gina, and you'll find that in the book too. There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. That's sort of like a person who doesn't have a pet. And he walks into a kennel full of Irish setters, and it would sure help him identify those individuals if they had name tags on them, because he's sure not going to be able to identify them. Although, if anybody pet owners all know that you can identify the individual animals eventually by their personalities and by their looks, but on first sight, it's difficult. And eventually I did get to be able to start recognizing particular individuals. But anyway, Gina, I said, I took a tour. The day was over, we'd done our business, and that doesn't sound right. We took a tour, and I said I'd like to look out of one of the portholes. I really wanted to look out of one of the portholes. I wanted to see the earth below, if that's where we were. And as it turned out, we were behind the moon. We were in the shadow of the moon, and we were in darkness. And she took me. We went up an elevator, and we come out into an observation bubble, and it buckled my knees to see the sight that I saw, to see a billion stars, and I won't say glistening or twinkling, I think is the word I used one time, twinkling. And boy, I was really nailed on that one because, of course, there is no atmosphere and stars don't twinkle, and I know that, but it's a figure of speech. Give me a break, please. You know, they were blazing against the black velvet of the cosmos, you know, and in blazing in such glory that the ship was lit up fully as like about the quarter of the light of a moon. So it was quite bright, and I saw the ship seemed to go out a mile. It was disc-shaped, although it wasn't smooth. It was disc-shaped. There were structures on it. I don't know what the structures were for. Some of them actually were ports. I saw little hovercraft, moving about, and the ship was lit up in spotlights. So obviously we were in the darkness. Otherwise, the sun would have been lighting it up. And it seemed to go out for a mile in all direction, a mile, in that direction from what I could see. As it turned out, it was 3/4 of a mile in radius, so that would make it 1.5 miles in diameter. And it was just a spectacular view, and we spent hours there, and I was in reverie, and it was something that I'll never forget. And I actually got a little bit emotional, if I remember. I may have put that in the book. Is that what you wanted me to say?
Yeah, I could just tell them a little basic about the ship. You've got about 35 minutes, so if you want, just kind of wrap it up a little bit and then open it up for questions.
Yeah, because the questions actually, I like the interchange because there's I could keep going here and give you all the details. We deal in here. There's a sex scene in here. I don't want to talk about it. Number one, it's kind of embarrassing, and number two, my wife is sitting here. Oh, by the way, I might point out that my wife also is an alien. She was born in Mexico, but she's legal. So there's also one of the most controversial parts of the book, quite frankly, is the area on religion. And again, I am out of my element in religion. I have no religious background whatsoever. I was never interested in religion. Religion to me was nonsense. I still haven't changed my mind too much on religion, although what they did tell me has given me pause to think, and I believe what they tell me on a scientific basis, and again, I don't know where I stand anymore, although I don't go to church and I don't read the Bible or whatever other holy books there are, which I'm not familiar with. But I was raised in a WASP culture. So you're going to, even though I didn't have any religious background, naturally you're going to absorb some of the culture. I mean, your parent. My father was a Presbyterian, so you're going to hear about Jesus. You're going to hear about the pearly gates. You're going to hear about other things. I wasn't raised in a Jewish culture or a Muslim culture or a Buddhist culture, so I have difficulty dealing with the religious elements too in here because, quite frankly, the sex part and the religious part I gave very serious consideration to not including because it's controversial and it really doesn't add anything as far as carrying the message that they want me to carry. And I'm not sure even they approve, but I thought, well, if I'm going to write a diary, I'm going to write the whole diary as I think I experienced it, and so I put it in here. But people have been misinterpreted, and this is, religion is a very emotional subject. I look much better in these glasses. religion's a very emotional subject, and people take their religion very seriously. And I really, I mean, I'm like anybody with any common sense who goes to a bar. I'm not going to discuss religion or politics, because I'm not that big. I don't like getting my nose bloodied, and nothing is resolved. I didn't want to deal with the religious area, and I still have trouble dealing with it. But people are misinterpreting it because I think it's pretty obvious, and I shouldn't say that because that sounds smug. It didn't seem pretty obvious until after I started reading it a couple of times, and I put it down literally, and then read it, and I was questioned upon it, and then actually in retrospect I thought, and it seems pretty obvious now to me in retrospect, that much of the material that is in there, or a lot of the material, or some of the material, I don't know how much, this is not working, I don't know why I have it there in front of me, is allegorical. I was raised in a WASP culture, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, and I think that they were trying to reveal to me basic spiritual, not religious, but spiritual truths in a way that I could relate to. I can't relate to any type of philosophical, metaphysical concepts. It's totally alien to me. It's like I'm like a Sunday school child in a classroom full of divinity students. I'm totally out of my element. And people have been taking issue with a lot of the stuff in the book. And some people have actually been trying to get me to align myself with their particular church groups because their church group, they want me to validate their religion at the expense of other religions. Well, I can't do that. I'm not going to be a mouthpiece for any particular church. I don't believe in any of the churches, quite frankly. I think they were trying to reveal to me basic fundamental truths, and they put it in terms that I could understand, and I could understand it in terms of the pearly gates and heaven and God and things like that. And I don't think any more should be read into it. They have great respect for religion, and they have their own religions, and they have great respect for the religions of other people, and they do not pass judgment on other religions. They consider all of them valid, and I'm ready to take questions any time. This lady here caught my eye the first time, but why don't we? What's the protocol here? Do we line up and ask? I would like to get this lady over here first because I saw her first with the necklace on. I saw her first. Yes, in the blue sweater with the necklace. I'm looking at you. I am cross-eyed, but you may think I'm looking over here, but I was looking at you.
Where were they from?
Where were they from? They didn't tell me actually the name of the galaxy. They told me that the name of their planet would translate into English as verdant. As far as I know, the dictionary, the definition of verdant is lush and green. To me, it represents a garden, so a garden planet. They say, if I recall, I can remember the story in general. Some of the details escape me. I have to go back and look at the book. But if I recall, it's 14 million light years away, and that to me is astounding. And yet, it's not that far when you consider that the universe, from what I understand, and I may be wrong, but I'm not a scientist. I think the universe is about 30 billion light years across from event horizon to event horizon. If we are approximately in the middle, our galaxy is part of a cluster of galaxies approximately in the middle, then it would be 15 billion light years to the event horizon or to the edge. Is someone trying to get my attention? Oh, okay. Wait a minute. I want to go on with this. Where was I? Yeah. But they didn't tell me the name of their place. But 14 million light years is really considering the universe is 30 billion light years in diameter, that makes them practically neighbors. If this were a country, if the universe were a country 1,000 miles across, they'd live a half mile down the road from us, and that virtually makes them neighbors. I said, okay, I don't buy a million times faster than the speed of light, which was what they said they can travel. They can travel 1,000 times faster than the speed of light, 1,000,000 times faster than the speed of light. I said, no. I don't know anything about science, but I think Einstein's theory of relativity says that once mass starts approaching the speed of light, it turns into energy. Is that not correct? I think that's what happens, and it can't remain mass. And they said we don't travel in the conventional sense by going from point A to point B. Light does. Light goes from here to here. If it's 1,000 light years, it'll take 1,000 years. They don't travel in the conventional sense of going from A to B. What they do is they have what I call a flicker drive. I didn't even use that in the book. I don't know why. I like that name. And I don't know what they call it. A flicker drive in which they disappear from point A and reappear at point B instantaneously. Now, I don't know how they do that. I don't know if they bend time or anything else. I don't understand anything about quantum physics or anything else. And then what happens is they put it on cruise control. So they're flickering. They flick to B, flick to C, flick to D. They can only make a finite jump each time. There's a limit to each jump, and I think that jump is around 5 or 6 million miles. Okay, let's say 6 million. So they can jump from A to B, and they can do that instantaneously. Now, if that's 6 million miles, it's going to take light at 186,000 miles per second, whatever, some minutes to get there, some seconds to get there. Anyway, they go from point A to point B. They're on cruise control now. Don't forget, they haven't just made one jump. They've gone into overdrive. So they're flickering. Next they go to C, and then D, and then E, and then F, and G. Okay. If they want to go really far, if they want to go a million light years down the road, if they're traveling at 1,000,000 times faster than the speed of light, obviously it's going to take them a year to get down there, right? Okay. If they're flickering at 6 million miles per flick, they have to flick 1 trillion times a year. If they're flicking 1 trillion times a year, they're flicking at 31 to 32,000 times per second. 31 to 32,000 times per second. And each of those flicks, each of those jumps is 6 million miles. Now they're traveling faster than the speed. They're not traveling. They're going to that place. By the time they get to that place, light will take a year to get there. Light will take 1,000,000 years to get there. They've gone there in a year by going 1,000,000 times faster than the speed of light. Okay, next question.
I'm curious about how you were actually taken aboard the Krapf. Were you taken in spirit out of your body? Were you sucked out the window of your bedroom? Or did your body dematerialize like in Star Trek and get beamed up?
My sensory impressions tell me that I actually was physically taken aboard, beamed. My sensory impressions tell me that.
Was there anybody in your house who could say that you were missing for those period of time?
Let me refer back to what Jodie Foster says. I can't prove it, and I can't explain it. No one was there. Yeah. I have no proof. I didn't bring back an ashtray, and I didn't take any cigarettes with me. Matter of fact, when I went up there, I was wearing jockey shorts and a T-shirt with a Stanford logo on it, and when I come back, even though they provided me with boxer shorts, I wish I could have come back with their boxer shorts, but I come back with my Stanford T-shirt logo and my jockey shorts. Even though I'm not that unhygienic, I changed underwear every day, or maybe even a couple of times a day. However, I'm not discounting anything. When my book came out, I was contacted by all kinds of people. Very legitimate people, very intelligent people, very lucid, rational, reasonable people with advanced degrees. Great fun talking to them. And some wackos. You can't deny that there are wackos in the group. I mean, it's a magnet. It's a magnet. I thought all of you were wackos. I found out, much to my surprise, it's a very small minority. However, the mainstream says I'm a wacko, so that doesn't mean anything. But I don't discount anything. People have suggested so many things to me, filled my mind with so many ideas and so much garbage as well, that it started cluttering my mind, and I started becoming unfocused on my own story, and I just stopped listening and stopped reading. I'm not interested in it anymore, so I can stay focused. Go ahead.
With a ship as big as you described, at least a half a mile across, in Los Angeles, were they like cloaked and not visible, like the Klingons do, or were they? I mean, a ship that big in Los Angeles, someone would have seen it.
The ship was not above Los Angeles. The ship was behind the moon. I was beamed
So
up.
you were beamed all that way.
I was beamed up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. From what my sensory perceptions tell me. But I discount nothing. I mean, after this happens to a mainstream person, I'm an outsider. When this happens to an outsider, my mind is open to anything now. I used to close my mind to some things, and I thought I was open-minded by closing my mind to some things. But I don't. I'm willing to listen to anybody who can give me a reasonable alternative explanation as to what happened to me. Please do. I want to find out. You know what I'd like to touch on here too? I'd like to touch on I didn't see anything if you didn't. There's a reason why the mainstream press do not cover basically abduction stories, and that is that names make news. An anonymous Montana rancher is not a name and does not make news. The Pope, the President, and the Prince of Wales are names and they make news. If the Montana rancher gets a case of poison ivy, that's not news. You're not going to see it on the 6 o'clock broadcast. You're not going to see it in the paper the next day. If the President, the Pope, or the Prince of Wales gets a case of poison ivy, you might see a small story on it if there's room on page 19 or 29, because names make news. Poison ivy is no big deal, but names make news. If an anonymous rancher is abducted, that's not news. He's not a name. If the Pope, the President, the Prince of Wales is abducted, or the CIO of a big corporation, or the head of a college is abducted, and he said he was abducted, I'll guarantee you that's worldwide news, because names make news. Now here's where the mainstream media, and I'm just as guilty of this, here's where the mainstream media are missing a story. If you get a case of poison ivy, and you get a case of poison ivy, that's not news. If 10,000 people, 20,000 people, 1 million people, all of a sudden break out with cases of poison ivy, it's not the names that make news anymore, it's the sheer numbers. If the Pope, if an anonymous rancher is abducted, that's not news. But if 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, 1 million people start claiming that they've had abduction experiences, it's not the individuals anymore that make the news. The sheer numbers make the news, and this is where the mainstream media are falling down on a job. And if I were editor, I would assign some resources and say, let's go out and find out what is going on. I want to find out if it's madness. I want to find out if it's errant brain chemistry. I want to find out if it's fantasies conjured up by a troubled mind to deal with deep-rooted psychological problems. Or I want to find out if it's actually real. And we are not doing this. The mainstream media, newspaper people generally have a beat. Reporters generally have a beat. They cover politics, they cover the police, they cover the medicine, they cover government, they cover the school board, they cover Sacramento, whatever. They have beats. Then there are general assignment reporters. General assignment reporters generally are sent out on stories. A train hit a truck at a railroad crossing, go down and cover that. The PTA is having something going on over there, go over there and cover that. That's because it's going to take, and I don't know how long it's going to take, but it's going to take a visionary editor one day to say, there's too many people here making this claim. This is a legitimate news story. Let's devote some resources to it. Let's put some money behind it. Let's put some reporters on it, and let's find out what the true story is.
I have 3 questions. The first is, what did they look like?
Okay, their description. This is where I take heat, because people have their own concepts of what they're supposed to look like, and they're supposed to look like grays. I never heard of the word grays when I had my experience. I saw the caricature of the gray. Everybody has seen it. It's not just in metaphysical magazines or in UFO magazines. It's been in the mainstream press. It's been on television. The typical gray. You all seen the caricature with the big eyes and everything else. I mean, I don't have to describe it to you. These people were not typical grays. They were very similar, but their eyes were kind of slanted, and they had slits in them. And I have had people come up to me and confide in me, and these are people who are suffering because they can't say anything to anybody. They have to go out and work on their jobs. They can't alienate their families. And they have come up to me and said, thank you so much, because I've had the same experience myself. And so they were 5'2" to 5'4". I think the smaller ones were the females, the larger ones were the males. They had very small, almost a non-existent nose, a couple of black dots that seemed like nostrils, the slanted eyes. I could see the eyes, but dark, a little bit of white around them. I didn't see any particular color. They just seemed like dark. No visible hair. They were very slightly built. And their skin coloring was, from what I saw, was a muted tan to a kind of grayish white. And I thought I saw a green tinge to them, but I can't be sure because of the lighting. I'd have to actually take them out into the sunlight and look at them in sunlight, because I have no idea what the lighting was doing to them. So that's my best sensory description of what they looked like.
And was there, while you were on the ship, was there an obvious identification that it was male dominated or female dominated, or in the way they interacted, or how it was run, or was it just a
No, totally gender equal.
Gender equal.
Yeah,
Okay.
totally gender equal.
And you had mentioned also about when civilizations on planets are within 1,000 years of space travel, if the civilization is hostile, then they're restricted to their planet. How, and you'd mentioned that there was a way that was achieved. How was it achieved?
Usually what they do is, it's a very, very simple process. They usually go in and simply sabotage their satellites, so that inexplicably, the satellites that should be staying up there against all scientific, fact are starting to fall out of the sky. The programs don't work, and they just simply become isolated to their planet. There was a case where I was told of a warring. There was a case where I was told where there was some warring factions out in. Let's see. This has to do with weapons. I said, suppose you come up. You don't have any weapons. I said, suppose you come up against a warring faction that's already in space before you discover them. And I was told that they have all come across those. I said, well, now what do? They have their guns, and you have nothing. They said that they have absolute intelligence. And absolute intelligence is achieving an intelligence where it's biologically impossible to go any farther. That doesn't mean they're gods. That means simply that I can lift so much weight. I'm not a Superman, but I can lift so much weight, and I can reach my potential, and that's all I can. That's the farthest I can go. That's all that means. They have achieved absolute intelligence. So I said, okay, and they said, no weapon of war is a match against absolute intelligence. So I said, well, fine. And we kind of compared it to chess. And so I said, well, what happens if you come across a species that is warlike and has also achieved absolute intelligence? Now they're as smart as you are, and they've got the guns. And he said, that's a contradiction in terms. If they have achieved absolute intelligence, they don't have to resort to weapons, because that's the weapons of the foolish and the stupid. And if they have to rely upon weapons, then they have not achieved absolute intelligence.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I am curious about the bathroom. I want to know what it looks like.
Just a moment now. Just a moment now. That was very funny. However, I didn't get it. What did you say?
The bathroom. You said you used the bathroom. I want to know what the bathroom looked like.
Oh.
And were you in a gravitational situation, or were you like on a spaceship?
Artificial gravity. Artificial gravity did come up, and as I said in the book, it was a room straight out of a Holiday Inn, and maybe I should be a little more diplomatic by saying a Gold River Resort, but it's actually a Holiday Inn. Flush toilet, lavatory, all the comforts of home.
Do they have emotions, and how do they relate to us in terms of how we process information, how we relate to one another, treat one another?
They do have emotions, very, very difficult to discern at first. Very neutral. You have to be around them, you have to get experience, and you have to, and it takes time until finally you see those very, very slight musculature movements in which it's displaying some emotion. Something like this might translate into you falling on the floor, holding your stomach and rolling around, guffawing. They're very, 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 very subtle. As to the second part of your question, how do they what?
How do they relate to one another? In other words, we as Homo sapiens,
Yes.
we talk to one another.
Yes.
We use verbal and body language.
Yes.
We communicate our feelings, our emotions in terms of facial expressions.
Right. The human face, by the way,
How do they communicate and interrelate with one another?
I'm not one of them. I don't know. They have unconditional love for one another. They told me that. They love one another. Love one another. Zillions of strangers equally and passionately as they would love their closest family member. But in terms of relating to each other and communicating with each other, I have no idea if they're sending telepathic messages back and forth between them. I can tell them when they're talking, but
They speak as you and I speak?
my sensory impressions told me that they were speaking to me. But since I have no experience with telepathic communication, and if you have never had the experience with telepathic communication, if he sent a message to you telepathically, how would you hear it? Would you hear it as just a thought in your head, or would your brain interpret it as sound that you're hearing through your ears? Do you know?
Well, are thought balls, do they use an accumulation of information in a explosive impression in the mind?
You haven't answered my question. I won't answer yours.
Well, I know.
If you got a telepathic message from him,
Yes.
do you know for sure that you're going to receive that as an auditory signal that you can actually hear, or do you think you're just going to hear it as you think, as you run words through your own mind? See, you don't know,
Well,
because you don't do it.
I can only speak from experience. I have had, at rare occasions, not regularly, a voice in my head, not outside my body,
Oh, okay.
and it has told me or said a specific thing to me. I have also had these things described as thought balls.
Oh, okay.
An explosion of information.
I have no knowledge of it. I couldn't answer your question. I'm sorry. I just simply have no knowledge. I could sit here and give you some bull, but
I don't want you to do that.
No.
Did you witness them communicate with each other?
Yeah, when I was in their group, we communicated with each other, they with me and I with them. I heard them speak to one another in their alien tongue,
How did they do it?
the same way they
Did
spoke
they do
to
it with
me.
their mouth?
It sounded like I was hearing words. I did not see their mouths move. I did not see lips move. I did not see a tongue. It sounded to me like the same, I don't mean to annoy you people on this side over here. It sounded to me like the same sound, well, not the same sound, but it would be like a parrot mimicking the sound of the human voice. It does it without any lips, which it doesn't have anyway. It's got a beak, and it doesn't use a tongue. It comes strictly from the throat. I thought I was hearing that. But I'm not going to close my mind and say I wasn't hearing that, that they're not using telepathy upon me. I don't know. I'm not ruling anything out. I think I heard them.
I'm sure you did. I have no doubt of that.
You're sure than I am.
I'm just curious how you heard them. That was all.
I heard them through my ears. That's what I thought. But I'm not going to swear to it, because maybe their telepathy is communicated in such a way is that you think you're hearing it through your ears when you're really not. So I don't discount anything. My mind is wide open.
Did they give you any impression whatsoever about the leaders of our world and whether they had had contact with them, whether it had been satisfactory, unsatisfactory?
As far as I know, that they have not been in contact with any leaders of the world whatsoever, and for one very good reason. First of all, they're not going to deal with the leaders of rogue governments because they don't qualify as decent people, and they're not going to deal with the democratic leaders of the leaders of democratic societies, because in a few years when the contact takes place, the people who may be leading these countries will have been gone, and they may not. Then the people who are leading them may not even have a name identification today. I mean, you may be the president in 2006. I don't know, and most people probably don't know your name. I don't even know it. Am I still coming loud and clear? You see? That's one of the reasons they don't deal with the government leaders.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I always got the hard questions. Okay. How do they think we should go about isolating the 20% and especially the controlling elite? How do they expect us to do that as people, as a race? How are we going to get the quote-unquote bad guys out of here?
Well, the way I look at it, I don't know. But the way I look at it seems pretty simple. We're 80% and they're 20%.
They got the money. They got the power.
We got the people.
How are we going to do it? Did they give you any suggestions?
No. I have no idea. All I know is that man's destiny is in humankind's destiny is in humankind's hands. They will welcome us into their federation as long as we get our house in order, and as long as we make sure that Saddam Hussein and his henchmen are not going to be up there running around in rogue gunships. And if we can't make sure that that's not going to happen, then I don't know what's going to happen.
What if the 80% wants to make a choice on just separating from the 20%? Would they work with us on that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Go to a whole nother world and say, okay, we want to do it the right way and leave this 20% behind? We're through with them anyhow?
I have no knowledge of that whatsoever. It never came up. It never came up. As far as I know, they want us to clean up our act. And I'll tell you the truth, I was very, very concerned. Where did she get to? I was very, very concerned about what our status was after India and Pakistan exploded their nuclear devices. I was very concerned about that. And I don't know what they're thinking. Let me just digress a little bit. I found myself another limb here I'm going to crawl out upon. I was talking to an editor of a New Age magazine, and we were talking about false memories. And I'm a very practical person. I said, I don't trust my memory any more than than I'm suspicious of it. And most people think that just because they remember something, it's actually true. I don't believe that. I believe there are such things as false memories because I think I have a false memory. And I told her about it. I said. I was a boy about 13 or 14 back on the farm. I was coming into puberty. All these hormones were racing through my body, and I started thinking about girls, and I started thinking, I wonder where my future wife is today. And I have this memory in my head. There's no doubt in my mind. This memory is in my head. I remember it for 50 years. And I said, my future wife is a little girl in Mexico. She's about 2 years old, and I was about 14. And I told this woman, I says, obviously, that's a false memory. I says, it's impossible for me to have known that. It's not possible. So obviously, I met my wife, we got married, and I manufactured this memory. And I manufactured it and made it retroactive for 30 years or whatever, And this woman suggested that, she said, no, she said, I believe you actually had precognition. Well, I mean, if someone suggested to you precognition, you may just kind of, accept that. Someone suggests precognition to me, I'm going to go, that's a little weird. I don't know. I don't go for that kind of stuff. She said, what you ought to do then is try to contact them telepathically, because I said I hadn't been in contact with them again. She says, you ought to try to contact them telepathically. I said, do you realize what you're saying and who I am? And she says, try it. And so I put it out of my mind. This was some months back. But gradually, and I'm going to feel very, very silly doing it, I'm going to go to my room one of these days, and I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to try to telepathically communicate with these beings. I don't expect it to... I don't expect it to work. I don't expect it to work because of who I am and where I come from and my orthodox thinking. And if it does work, it's probably going to scare the bejesus out of me. But I'll certainly write things down if it does and let you know about it.
You mentioned before they gave you clothes and also they did feed you. So I would be very interested what they gave you for clothes and how did you sleep there on the ship?
I slept in a bed, and they gave me the same kind of robe they were wearing. It was I'm not a fashion plate. I don't know what a robe is versus a tunic versus a gown. It was something like, if you ever seen an old Charles Lawton movie and he plays a Roman senator, it was something like that. It come to the elbows and it come to the knees, and it had a little flap here that could come over and fasten somehow. But I don't read the life and style section or the fashion section of the LA Times, so I don't know. This was just a...
So it was not earthly clothes so much, then it was more a little...
No, I wasn't wearing a business suit or Levi's or anything like that, no.
And how about the food now? Did you eat with them? Did you eat alone? And what kind
They
of food?
eat, I never saw them eat or drink. They eat only they have one meal every 36 hours. I got to turn my attention over here. They think I'm ignoring them. They eat every 30. Maybe we could move the microphone over there eventually. They have one meal every 36 hours, and basically it's hydroponically grown plant food. And they fed me a vast variety of human dishes, which were just magnificent. And I'm not saying anything about the buffet up here, but.
So with other words, you had real food there, like what you would eat here on Earth?
It was real food, and we talked about it later, and I found out that it was plant material, including the meat, because I don't eat much meat. Very once in a while. I'm not a strict vegetarian, but I haven't eaten meat for 30 years, much meat at all. Once in a while
But where did they get the meat? I mean, if you are behind the moon...
It's plant material. They grow it aboard the ship. It's plant material, and it's processed. It's technology. It's technology. Don't try to think of it in terms of the farm and picking up eggs from the chicken nest. This is technology.
slept there, did you sleep like in your own bed? That,
It wasn't my bed, but I slept in a
no,
bed.
but I mean, I understand, but I'm saying, did you feel like you sleep in? Was it a feeling like in your own bed, or
It was very
it
comfortable.
different sleep?
It was very comfortable. And again, I'm not going to make any comparisons. You put that in my ear here, and I'll just feed it out over this way.
Okay. So, what did you learn about the upcoming decade or so? Can't hear you. What did you learn about the upcoming decade?
There is a loose timetable in place. Now, this is where it gets complicated. All I can tell you is what I wrote in the book. Whatever I say right now is what's in the book. It's nothing that I'm saying outside of the book. The timetable, according to the book, was provided to me by a person from the Los Angeles Times who is an ambassador. So the book says. However, something has happened in the last several months, and I cannot expand upon that particular area of the book. The only thing I can tell you is what's in the book. And the best way to get that information is borrow a copy and read it. I'll even lend you a copy. But something has happened, and then the natural question is, the natural next zillion questions are, well, what happened, and why can't you tell us, and blah, blah, blah. And I says, I can't answer. I can't tell you. I can't tell you what happened. There is a loose timetable. According to the person from the Los Angeles Times, gave me a timetable about what's going to happen. About 2002, according to the book, I'm not even telling you this, I'm just telling you what's in the book. The book says about 2002, the first ambassadors are going to start coming out and relating their experiences. And start convincing vast segments of the population that this summit conference is going to take place. And then over the next several years, the summit conference will take place. The ground rules will be laid out. The organization will be set up, and the training will be conducted. And by the year 2010, everything should be complete, and we should be on our way.
Does this something maybe have to do with us improving our relationships with each other and raising our awareness? Is that a goal of theirs? Would they like to see us move in that direction?
I can't see why they would. I can't see why they wouldn't. I got 15 minutes left. I can't see why they would object to anything like that. These are people who value character. They're very moral and very ethical and value character and have little tolerance for renegades and rogues. And we are a very diverse species, and they're aware of that. And they don't deal with that. They don't have to deal with that. They are very homogenous. I mean, they're people. If one person's good, the whole society's good. Here, you meet a good person and you think, oh, these people are so nice, and you walk down walk down the block and you get slugged over the head and mugged. That's very strange to them.
Phil, you got well over a half hour yet. That was wrong.
Why you? If you want me to quit, I'll quit.
These beings, they told you about the Roswell incident. Would you care to share that with us?
We touched on it briefly. We were talking about the safety of their ship, and I think I was talking with Gina, I'm not sure, my personal tour guide and attendant. I don't think it was in one of the formal sessions, and I just briefly mentioned it because I never believed in Roswell anyway, quite frank. I mean, of course I believe in Roswell, it's there, but I never believed in the crash. It just wasn't something that we in the mainstream accepted. I said, she was talking about the safety of their ships, and they hadn't had an accident in I don't know how many jillions of years. I says, oh well, so then Roswell being only 50 years before, I said, so there's nothing to the Roswell story. And she said, that was not one of our ships. and gave me a few more details, but basically that's what it came down to. That was not one of our ships.
Right, but in the book you talk about these other beings working in cooperation with them, doing an errand and crashing. And what I'm curious about is why they didn't have a rescue mission to pick them up.
I have no idea. Maybe they were dead on impact. Maybe they were. I don't know too much about it. I picked some stuff up on TV. The way I understand it, that a couple of the crew members were dead and one was alive, and maybe that might have been mortally wounded. And it had already fallen into the hands of the government. And what's that going to involve? Intervention? I'm only guessing. I'm not going to answer your question. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not going to answer your question. I'm not going to speculate because I don't know. I don't know. And I could speculate all day long. Maybe they didn't want a confrontation. Maybe they felt it was hopeless or useless. I have no idea.
One other question. Since you worked at the LA Times for such a long period of time, did they do an article on you after this book came out?
Are you kidding me? I can imagine the snickering that's going on right down there right now. One of these days, see, when I retired from there 5 years ago, those dumb jerks, they forgot to take my ID. And I'm going to go down there and I'm going to walk in and I'm going to stick my book under my arm. I'm going to walk through the newsroom and just see what kind of a reaction I get. That's going to be fun. The Los Angeles Times and the mainstream news media are not going to touch this story. And it would be if this story got out into the mainstream, I guarantee you that it would first go out on the broadcast medium, maybe radio and television, and then eventually, if there was enough coverage where the press medium saw that they were missing a story, then they might jump on it. Because television, by its very nature, is more sensational than your mainstream press. So if this got out of the UFO community, and right now it is confined to the UFO community, I suspect that television would be the first one to break it. Radio has done a little bit, but if television broke it, and then if it got more exposure after that, then reluctantly the press would see that they're missing a story, and then they would reluctantly come in. But I have no idea what's going to happen. I think within a year, if it hasn't broken out of the mainstream community, out of the UFO community into the mainstream, I don't think it's going to. Giorgio.
Okay. Mr. Giorgio Bongiovanni has 2 questions for you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Sure. Oh, I can. Can I?
Question number 1. If you were Mr. Philip Krapf 2 years ago, and you were sitting in this audience today, listening to Mr. Philip Krapf tell this story, what would your reaction be to him?
Okay. What time did the meeting start? It started at 10 after 8. I'd have been out of here by 8:11.
No. Contestó que sí, ¿cuánto tiempo tenemos? Que es una respuesta muy larga.
And going like this.
Ah.
Entonces, ¿usted que contesta sí o no? ¿Usted había creído a usted mismo?
Would you have believed yourself then?
¿Sí o no?
Absolutely not.
Absolutamente no.
Thank you.
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Segunda pregunta.
Second question. As an experiencer or an abductee or a contactee, would you now consider creating a relationship with other experiencers, contactees, ambassadors, or are you satisfied with simply writing the book and walking away from this?
I wouldn't be able to establish any relationship with any other ambassador since I don't know who they are.
And other experiencers or contactees?
They contact me all the time.
And are you interested in creating a relationship with them or an organization or something that will move this information forward?
I haven't given it any thought. It would depend upon depend upon the proposition and the details and everything else. If it's just someone who wants me to advise them because of the trauma they're suffering. I'm not the person to do that. There are support groups who are ministering to these people.
Yes.
I'm not qualified to do that.
Mr. Bongiovanni recommends that you give it some thought.
Okay, my mind is open. I'll think about it.
Got it? And I have also a request from a gentleman in the audience who has asked me to mention to you that he is here and knows exactly what you're talking about and would like to speak to you later.
I don't think I want to meet him. No, I have met people who even despite the fact that much of the material that is in my book is contradictory to most of the commonly held beliefs, I have had people come up to me and tell me they've had the same experience, and with great gratitude and relief, because they felt that something was wrong with them, and they couldn't tell their friends. They're young people; they have to work. They can't tell their friends. They don't want to feel that isolation that we all feel. I mean, I felt the isolation. You know, I've seen the mainstream move away from me. At the same time, you know, I guess I could describe myself as a man without a community. You know, you've heard of the man without a country. I'm the man without a community. The mainstream has moved away from me. The local newspaper has ridiculed me. My neighbors are looking at me and doing a shuffle I've never seen before, you know.
All I want to say is that I'm a little bit of a scientist and so forth, and you made a believer out of me on your business about the travel. That is the way a lot of other outfits travel also, and you feel as if that's sort of unusual and so forth and so on. It isn't. It's a sort of a standard transportation type of thing. I don't really understand it, but it's teleporting. But what most of the people here and everywhere, and also I have a sort of a thing here that says that bathroom business, they figured that it has to be something special and so forth and so on. And as if they either taught us how to make a bathroom or we taught them or something like that. Can you, was there an awful lot of things just like we have around there?
I have no reason to believe that this was their standard unit. I suspect that they customized these units for the Earthlings who were there. Yeah. I suspect that these were customized to make them feel at home.
Okay, that explains a lot.
Right.
Why these people get mixed up that are sort of critical of it.
Yeah, I mean, the flush toilet is actually pretty primitive, and you wouldn't think a race of this technology would be, you know, involved in something like that. That's like the outhouse, you know. But I think it was just to make us feel, comfortable, and I was comfortable.
Okay. That should help an awful lot of these people here who kind of screwed up about this stuff.
Hello.
I was curious to know if the aliens in the ship were interested in allowing you to mingle with the other people that were on board the ship at the time you were. You said there were numerous other people on this table.
No, I only the book says. And again, we'll have to be careful here because it says something happened. The book says that I ran into one person that I recognized, a very prominent Earth person that I recognized. The book does not say that I ran into anybody else but that one person. Mm-hmm. And again, because of what has happened, I can't elaborate on that.
Oh, okay, thanks.
But it's a very good question.
I was wondering, was there any mention by them of how this contact and this meeting is going to come about in relation to the earth changes that are imminent and have been long predicted? But the tectonic plates are shifting and the volcanoes and the tsunamis and so on. It seems like there's a lot building up. And was there any mention from them that that's going to affect this future contact?
Well, I've been approaching the subject before, and no, it was not discussed. Apparently, there are people who believe that there are certain cataclysmic Earth changes going to occur. I know nothing about them, and I have no evidence to support any belief of that nature. It simply didn't come up.
You don't feel that they're going to give us any protection against things like that coming up?
What I feel has nothing to do with what I know.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
G'day, how are you, mate? Who was the person you met? You said you met one person?
Yes?
Who was that?
I'll tell you
That was
what.
familiar.
He wants to know who the person was I met up there, and I will tell you who it was as soon as Bob Woodward tells you who Deep Throat was.
Right. And what's the reason for that? Why is it so?
What's the reason for that?
Yeah.
Ask Bob Woodward.
Yeah, okay. I've just gone through it.
The reason is, number one, I don't feel I'm authorized to do it. I feel that if they wanted me to tell, they would tell who it was. I feel that he would have contacted me and said, you can go ahead and use my name. And thirdly, as I say, something has happened, and I couldn't possibly say who it was.
Now, I've observed there's a lot of questions and probably not enough answers. And I mean this with respect. Have you had any psychiatric assessment?
Yeah, I'm nuts.
No? Have you had any?
Let me ask you this. When's the last time you had a genital exam or a proctology exam?
Actually, probably about 5 years ago.
I'm not going to reveal my medical history.
No, I think the statement you made before, though, you mentioned before that, like, if it doesn't come out, if it's not accepted in the UFO field within 12 months, it'll probably die off. I agree. Thanks.
Yes.
I would like to know if you know if these beings are responsible for the crop circles. Do you know what those are?
I have seen them on television, and I think they have been a little bit in the mainstream press. I have no knowledge of it whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
You had mentioned that about 2002 that these ambassadors would come out and start to spread this message or start to talk about their experience. And I'm curious, is that correct? And I'm just curious to know how they're going to do this. I mean, in what way will they do it? Will they reach the media, radio, television? How will it happen?
Well, since I'm not an important person, I don't know how you go about influencing your peers or getting in contact with the government officials that you have contacts with, or I suppose there's a certain protocol you go through, but I have no specific knowledge about it.
Anything.
No specific knowledge about it.
Yeah. I have one other question too. I have one other question. Did the subject ever come up? Did you ask them? Did they mention anything about, say, for instance, false abductions that are being done by our government? So, for instance, people who may feel that they're being abducted, but in fact, they weren't legitimate abductions.
I have no knowledge whatsoever on that subject at all.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
What was your wife's reaction to all this?
That's kind of a complicated story. How does a mainstream person come back and just start calling up people and saying, guess what? I started with my wife. I knew I had to tell people because the book was being published. I started softening my wife up, and it took 3 to 4 days. Probably had her softened up by a week. And I'd start with little things like we'd watch in Discovery or something, and I'd say, you know, there might be something this thing after all. I don't know. And then another time, you know what? I'm not sure we can kiss all these people off as wackos. There's an awful lot of them. And her reaction is, but see, I've been the opinionated one in my house for ever since we've been married, almost 32 years. And I just assumed that because I was so opinionated and she never argued back, she agreed with everything I said. So I assume she was a skeptic, but I'm not sure exactly where she was. She doesn't talk too much about it. As a matter of fact, I started thinking maybe she hasn't even been voting the way I've been telling her for the last 30 years. Which is even a bigger shock than not accepting my story. She is not under any orders not to answer any questions, but I doubt you'll get very much out of her. She does not bring the subject up. I'll bring it up, and she'll respond, but she does not bring it up on her own initiative, and she will discuss it in nodding her head, and that's about the extent of the discussion. But she does not get involved. I put a couple of books down in her office. She's a chiropractor. I put a couple of books down in her office, and she finally made me take them out because too many people were asking her too many questions that she just didn't want to get involved in. She says, "Look, it's not my story; it's his story. I don't want to. It's best for me to just stay out of it." And basically, that's a position she's taken. Although she supported me. Yes, ma'am.
We had a prediction since yesterday that something very fantastic was going to happen at this convention today. And we feel it's you. Very much so. But I do have a question. If there was one of those ambassadors in the audience, would you care to meet that person this evening that you're talking about, one of these ambassadors? Also, have you ever met one before?
Not knowingly.
Okay.
It would not surprise me if there was one here.
One or more, actually.
That's serious. And I don't think I would like to meet the person here at this time, but I would like to think about it, mull it over, contemplate it, and perhaps consider it, because there's tremendous implications in that. At this point, I'd rather the person is supposed to reveal himself or herself in a certain way, a certain protocol at a certain time. I'm not sure that I would want to know who the person is.
Not yet, maybe, huh?
Yeah. I'd really like to give it some thought. I mean, it's fascinating and intriguing, but I'd really like to give it some thought.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay.
And thank you for your sense of humor, too.
What sense of humor?
David Summer, in his remarkable presentation, showed footage of us possibly barely getting to the moon, but yet there's conversation about us traveling into deep space, and they're coming to, basically say, well, if you come out, this is the way to do it. I'm wondering what was discussed about the technology. Where did we get it? All of that.
You know what? I'm really not sure I understand the question. Could you speak up a little closer to the microphone?
Yes. They came to us because we have the potential for deep space travel.
Right.
And in one of the presentations that we saw earlier, there is questionable questionable footage about us necessarily getting to the moon back in the,
Right. Right.
And so all of a sudden, it's presented here that we have the potential to do deep space travel, that we possibly, we're neighbors at 14 billion light years away. I mean, that's astounding. And
No. I did not indicate that we have the potential to travel those vast distances. What I said was that if you just read your daily newspaper, deeper, you'll realize that our space program has progressed to the point where within 50 to 100 years, it's reasonable to expect that we should have ships going out to making journeys to the nearest stars. That's very, very rudimentary.
So okay, so we're not going to be out there in 2002. They're going to come here in 2002, but we're not going to be able to go out there within the next 4.
Well, certainly not that deeply. No, we're just going to be on. We are on the verge of going into deep space. But how long does it take to develop going into deep space? Does it take 1,000 years, to go to another galaxy? Our own galaxy is 100,000 miles across. There's many stars. There's how many stars in our galaxy? 400 billion or 200 billion? I don't know.
And considering that the technology is in the hands of the 20%,
the technology is in the hands of the 20%?
Well, the development on this planet of that kind of money and technology and research in NASA and our space program, that's in the hands of the 20%.
That's a conclusion that you're making that I'm not necessarily sure that I agree with, but go ahead.
Okay. So you're saying don't pay taxes, something like that. You're saying, I mean that's where that's basically how they pay. We buy it all. We're buying it.
Okay. I appreciate your point of view. I appreciate your opinion. But you're.
No. Maybe you don't. Maybe I wasn't clear. I was just asking if we are going to nicely corral this top 20%, so all the nice people can, make it out there.
I'm not sure that all the power is in the hands of the 20%. I think there are a lot of very, very decent people who populate this earth, who are very important people.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Well, you have your opinion, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but...
No. I have complete faith in the human species. It's just that, unfortunately, we haven't found consensus to be able to harness the power that we have in all of our hands. We haven't realized that yet, so you'll hopefully help us. Thank you.
Thank you.
A couple of young ladies here. I can wait.
Excuse you.
Do they have ears? Do they have ears?
Pardon me?
Do they have ears?
Oh yes, they have ears. Big ears by which to hear you by. How big? Oh, as big as a wolf's. No, I'm just kidding. Regular ears, a little bit pointed, not too much. Not too out of proportion to the rest of the body.
Pointed.
Pardon me?
What do you mean by pointed?
No, I said not too pointed.
Oh.
Not out of proportion to the rest of the body. I don't know if you can understand that, but regular ears, more or less, normal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could you describe how you got home, why you came home, and where'd you land?
I came home because I didn't know where else to go. And
was it your idea or theirs?
That was their idea. And I came home to my bed, and I came home the same way that I left, which is kind of a round trip. Not a bad way to go.
I haven't read your book, but could you tell us more about the other people who were on the tables and why they were there, what they were doing with them, and how long they would stay, or whatever?
From what I could observe, they were going through the typical examination. They were human. They were mostly asleep. And what's the common story that ties all what's the common thread that ties all these stories together? Usually they're there for a few minutes to a few hours, and I saw no reason to think that this situation was any different. Just ordinary people.
Were there children there also?
Were there children?
Yeah.
Are you talking about on the tables or among the crew?
Both.
I didn't see, well, I could have answered that either way, I guess. I didn't see any children I did see one young girl, but I think she was probably a teenager, and that was not a member of the crew. That was an Earthling. But I did not see any other children.
So are they more or less unconscious when they're on the table, or are they
Unconscious,
awake?
asleep.
Asleep?
Asleep is more, I think, descriptive than unconscious.
Right.
Yeah. Taken in their sleep, usually are asleep for the time they're there. But you know, during the night, people do kind of stir, and they see things they think and go back to sleep. And a lot of people are walking around today, I'm convinced, who have snatches of memory of having been abducted, but they dismiss it as a dream. They can't quite put their finger on it. They can't quite put it together, because I suspect that it's because they stirred in their sleep and were kind of semi-awake, and it bothers a lot of them. They wonder what's going on with them. Are they crazy? Some of them can't tell their parents or friends. If they do, they feel the ridicule, you know, and the isolation. So, you know, that's they just were mostly asleep. But I suspect that some of them might have come back with some memories, snatches of memories, and can't quite put their finger on it. What was it? A dream? What happened to me? I'm not quite sure. I've talked to people like this. Oh, time up.
Important question. Is writing your book the last written assignment for the Verdants? Or what will be your last assignment, or your next assignment?
Well, I have, unless there's some interest in what has occurred since I wrote the book and what has happened, and I'm not sure there is. I could sit down and kind of outline it and see what I could come up with. But I'm not sure how much interest there would be and what my reaction would be. If there was another contact, of course, I would certainly tell about that. But at this point, I have no reason to believe that there's going to be another contact. I hope. I'm going to try telepathy. But I'm going to feel awful silly. I don't know what it's going to be like. And I don't expect an answer.
Phil, could you tell the people a little bit about how long these folks live in their marriage, how they take partners and that kind of thing? And marriage and all that?
Oh, okay. They have extended their lifespans to, and it took a long time to do it. They lived like other animals that evolved. They lived at first for several generations, and they got to the point where they were living 20,000 Earth years. Now that's Earth years. That doesn't translate into their years. Their years, because their planet's bigger and their day takes 55 Earth hours, it translates into, I put it on my calculator one day, it translates into 7,000 or 8,000 years. They think that's as far as they can extend their lives. They do have long lifespans, and they do have multiple partners during their lives, although they are monogamous while they're with these partners. And if a child is born in any union, the parents always stay together until that child is born and until that child is raised, and that could be anywhere from 60 to 100 years. Earth years doesn't necessarily translate into their years. Be somewhat different. And then they don't have any thing as marriage ceremonies. They simply I said, well, what do they do? Fall out of love when they take on new partners? I said, well, what do? You fall out of love? Well, we don't fall in love because we love everybody universally. They